Long ago, in the coldest and most beautiful of all the old winters, there lived two children who loved each other so dearly that not even the Snow Queen herself, with all her ice and all her silence and all her endless glittering cold, could keep them apart forever. And that is the story I am going to tell you tonight. A long, slow story of a splinter of glass and a frozen heart, and a little girl who walked to the very end of the world in her bare feet to thaw it. So let your shoulders soften now, and let the day melt away from you the way frost melts from a window pane when the morning sun comes creeping up, slow and gold and gentle. And come with me now into the cold, where everything in the end comes warm and safe and right. But before we can begin properly, you must first hear about a mirror. For everything that follows begins with a mirror. And here is the first thread of the story. So take hold of it softly and do not grip it. That once, long ago, there was a wicked troll, one of the very worst that ever lived. And one day he was in a merry mood, for he had made a mirror, a strange and terrible mirror. And this mirror had the power to make everything good and beautiful that was reflected in it shrink almost to nothing, while everything worthless and ugly grew larger and worse, so that a lovely green meadow looked in it like boiled spinach, and the finest people looked hideous, and a single kind thought reflected in that glass would spread across a face like a horrible grin. And the troll and all his little troll pupils laughed and laughed at the mischief of it, and thought it the cleverest thing that had ever been made. And they grew so bold that they carried the mirror higher and higher up toward the sky itself, wanting to hold it up to the very angels. But the higher they flew, the more the mirror grinned and shook in their hands, until at last it shook so violently that it slipped from their grasp and fell all the way down to the earth, and there it shattered into 100 million pieces, into fragments so small that many of them were no larger than a grain of sand. And here is the terrible part, the part to carry gently down into your sleep, that these tiny splinters of the wicked mirror blew all about in the wide world, and wherever one flew into a person's eye, there it stayed. And from then on, that person saw everything crooked and ugly and wrong, saw only the flaws in every lovely thing, and worse still, if ever a splinter found its way into a person's heart, then something dreadful happened, for that heart slowly turned to a lump of ice, cold and hard, and unable any longer to feel love at all. And some of the pieces were so large that people made them into wind. And it was a sorrowful thing to look at your friends through such a glass. And some pieces were made into spectacles, and things went badly indeed when people put on those spectacles, meaning to see truly and be fair. And the wicked troll laughed until his sides ached, and he laughed still, for out there in the world the little splinters were flying about even now, and we must not forget them. No, we must keep them in mind, for one of them, one single grain of that wicked glass, is going to fly into the story we are about to tell and change everything. And we will not know when it comes until it has already come. So hold it lightly and let us go now to the two children in the warmth of the great city, before the cold ever touched them at all. For in a great city, so crowded with houses and people that there was no room for everyone to have even a little garden, there lived two poor children who had something better than a garden all the same. for they lived in 2 attic rooms directly across from one another, so close that you could step from the gutter of one roof to the gutter of the other. And on each windowsill their families kept a wooden box of earth in which grew sweet herbs and vegetables. And in each box grew also a little rose tree. And these 2 rose trees flourished so beautifully that in summer the parents would lay a plank across from window to window, and the children could cross the little bridge and sit together beneath the roses in a bower of green leaves and sweet blossom, high up above the city, in their own small green kingdom in the sky. The little boy was called Kay, and the little girl was called Gerda, and in summer they could reach each other in a single step across the plank. But in winter, when the snow lay thick and the windows were frozen shut, that was harder. And then they would each heat a copper coin on the stove and press it against the frozen glass, and it would melt a little round peephole in the ice. And behind each peephole would peer a soft, loving eye, one at each window, and it was the eye of the little boy and the eye of the little girl. And though the whole world outside was white and frozen, the 2 of them were warm and near and dear to each other. And I want you to feel, drifting there in your own warm bed, how safe that is. 2 hearts that love each other, keeping the cold at bay. One small, warm circle, melted in all the ice of the world. And that is how they were, Kay and Gerda, before anything at all had gone wrong. And in the evenings, when it was too cold to cross the plank, they would sit each in their own home while the grandmother told them stories. And one snowy night, as the white flakes came whirling thick past the window, the little boy asked, "Do the white bees have a queen? For the flakes are like a swarm of white bees." And the grandmother said, "Yes, they have a queen. She flies where the swarm is thickest. She is the largest of them all. And she never lies still upon the earth, but rises up again into the black clouds. And on many a winter's night, she flies through the streets of the town and peers in at the windows. And then the glass freezes over in wonderful patterns, like flowers." And Kay said, "And could she come in here?" And the grandmother said, "Only let her come, and I will set her upon the warm stove, and then she will melt away." But the grandmother was only smiling and did not truly mean it. And there is the second thread, so hold it close. For the Snow Queen was more real than the grandmother knew. And one day, before very long, she would come to that window after all. Now it happened one bright, cold winter's day, when Kay and Gerda were sitting together looking at a picture book, that the great clock in the church tower struck 5. And Kay suddenly cried out, "Oh, something has pricked my heart, and now something has flown into my eye." And Gerda looked into his eye, but could see nothing there. And yet something was there, and here it is, the moment the whole story has been quietly waiting for. So let it come softly, for one of the splinters of that wicked mirror, one tiny grain of the cruel glass that had flown about the world so long, had flown at last into little Kay, one splinter into his eye, and one, oh, the worst of all, one splinter straight into his heart. And though it gave him hardly a moment's pain, though the sharp stab passed almost at once, the splinters stayed. And from that moment, little Kay began to change. For now, when he looked at the roses that had always been so beautiful to him, he saw only that one was crooked and another was eaten by a worm. And he said, "Ugh, how ugly these roses are." And he kicked the box and tore off 2 of the blooms. And when Gerda saw him do it, her heart ached, and he only laughed at her tears. And when the grandmother told her gentle stories, he mocked them, and mimicked her, and put on her spectacles, and copied her way of speaking, and made everyone uneasy, for the splinter in his eye made everything good look ugly to him, and the splinter in his heart made him unable to feel the love that was all around him, so that he grew clever, and cold, and cruel, and cared no more for sitting under the roses with Gerda. And I want you to notice, softly, that none of this was truly Kay, that the real Kay, the warm, loving boy, was still in there all the while, only frozen over. Only hidden beneath the ice, the splinter was slowly spreading through him. And that is a thing worth carrying gently into sleep, that when someone we love grows cold and unkind, it is very often not the truth of them at all, only a splinter, only a hurt, only a frozen thing that has come over the warm, true heart beneath. And the winter deepened, and the snow lay thick, and Kay grew fonder of the cold than of anything warm. And one day he took his little sledge out to the great square, where the boldest boys would tie their sledges to the farm carts and be pulled along for a way. And while they were all playing there, a great sleigh came into the square, painted all in white, and in it sat someone wrapped in a white fur cloak and a white fur cap. And this sleigh drove twice round the square, and Kay, quick as thought, tied his little sledge on behind it, and away it went, faster and faster, out of the square and down the street and toward the town gate. And the snow began to fall so thickly that little Kay could not see his hand before him. And still the sleigh rushed on, and he tried to loosen his rope and free himself. But he could not. His little sledge held fast, and it flew on like the wind. And then the great sleigh stopped, and the one who drove it stood up, and the fur cloak and the fur cap were all of snow. And it was a lady, tall and slender and dazzling white, and she was the Snow Queen herself. And there is our second thread paid off, for she had come, after all, just as the grandmother had said, out of the thickest of the swirling flakes. And she said, "We have driven well, but why do you tremble with cold?" And she drew him into her sleigh beside her, and wrapped her fur about him, and it was as though he were sinking into a snowdrift. And she bent down and kissed him upon the forehead, and oh, her kiss was colder than ice. It went straight to his heart, which was already half frozen. And for a moment he felt as if he would die, and then the cold passed, and he felt no more chill at all. And she kissed him once again, and with that second kiss he forgot little Gerda, and the grandmother, and all of home. He forgot them clean away. And here is the third thread. So hold it very close, for the Snow Queen said, "Now I must kiss you no more, or I should kiss you to death." And she did not kiss him a third time. And Kay looked up at her, and she was so beautiful, so perfectly, coldly, cleverly beautiful, that he thought her the most wonderful being in all the world, and he was no longer afraid. And he told her he could do sums in his head, even with fractions, and that he knew the size of every country and how many people lived in it. And she only smiled, and up they flew, up over the black clouds, while the storm wind whistled and roared beneath them. And they flew on and on, over forest and lake, over sea and land, far away to the cold north, and beneath them the wind howled, and the wolves sang, and the snow glittered. And Kay looked down at it all, with the two splinters in him, and thought it beautiful. and felt no cold, and did not once remember the little girl who loved him, sitting alone at her frozen window far behind. Now, back in the town, little Gerda waited and waited. But Kay did not come home, and no one knew where he had gone. And the boys said only that they had seen him tie his sledge to a splendid great white sleigh that had driven out through the town gate. And many wept for him, and Gerda wept longest and hardest of all. And at last they said he must be dead. He must have fallen through the ice on the river and been carried away and drowned. And oh, those were dark and heavy days. But Gerda did not truly believe he was dead. Deep in her loving heart, she felt certain that he was alive somewhere and needed her. And so, when the spring came at last with its warm sunshine, Gerda said to the sunshine, "I think Kay is dead and gone." And the sunshine said, "I do not believe it." And she said the same to the swallows. And the swallows said, "We do not believe it." And at last Gerda herself did not believe it either. And one bright morning she put on her new red shoes, the ones Kay had never even seen, and she went down to the river to ask it whether it had taken her friend. And here begins Gerda's long journey. So settle a little deeper now, for this is a story of a small girl who walks all the way to the end of the world, and every step of it is gentle, and every step of it is warm with love. And Gerda stood on the riverbank and said to the water, "Is it true that you have taken my playmate? I will give you my red shoes if you will give him back to me." And it seemed to her that the little waves nodded strangely, and so she took off her precious red shoes, the dearest things she owned, and threw them into the river. But they fell close to the bank, and the little waves carried them straight back to her, as if the river would not take her dearest thing for something it had not done. And just then Gerda saw a little boat lying among the reeds, and she climbed into it to throw the shoes further out. But the boat was not tied fast, and her stepping into it set it loose, and slowly, slowly it drifted away from the shore, and out into the current, and away down the river, with little Gerda in it, all alone. And Gerda was very frightened at first, and wept. But no one heard her but the sparrows, and they could not carry her to land. They could only fly along the bank beside her, singing as if to comfort her, "Here we are, here we are." And the river carried her on, past green banks and pretty places. And Gerda grew calmer, and she thought, "Perhaps the river is carrying me to Kay." And she sat still and looked at the lovely green banks going by, for hour after hour, until at last the boat drifted near to a great cherry orchard. And in the orchard stood a little house with strange red and blue windows and a thatched roof. And before it stood 2 wooden soldiers who presented arms to everyone who sailed past. And Gerda called out to them, thinking they were alive. And of course they did not answer, but the calling brought out of the house an old woman leaning on a crooked stick, and she wore a great sun hat, all painted over with the loveliest flowers. And the old woman waded out and drew the boat to shore with her crooked stick, and lifted little Gerda out. And Gerda was glad to be on dry land again, though a little afraid of the strange old woman. And the old woman said, "Come, tell me who you are and how you come to be here." And Gerda told her everything, the whole story of Kay, and asked whether she had seen him. And the old woman said, "No, he has not passed this way, but he will come, only do not fret. Come inside and eat my cherries and look at my flowers." They are prettier than any picture book, and each one can tell you a story." And she took Gerda by the hand and led her into the little house and shut the door. And here is the fourth thread, so hold it softly, for the old woman was one who knew a little magic, though she was not truly wicked, only lonely. And she had taken such a liking to the pretty child that she wished to keep her there forever. And so the old woman combed Gerda's hair with a golden comb, and as she combed Gerda, little by little, began to forget her lost playmate Kay, for the comb was enchanted. And the old woman went out into her garden and touched all her rose trees, every one, and though they were in full and lovely bloom, they all sank down at her touch into the dark earth and vanished, so that not a single rose was left to be seen anywhere. For the old woman feared that if Gerda saw the roses, she would remember her own roses at home, and remember Kay, and grow sad, and wish to leave. And so Gerda stayed, and wandered in the beautiful garden, where every flower she could name was growing, all but roses, and she did not know that anything was missing. And the days went by, soft and golden and forgetful, one much like another. And this is the gentlest kind of danger in all the old stories. Not a dungeon and not a monster, but only comfort, only a soft, warm forgetting, only a place so pleasant that you might stay in it forever and never remember what you had set out to do. But the loving heart does not forget so easily, for one day Gerda happened to look at the old woman's great sun hat with the painted flowers upon it, and there, painted among all the others, was a rose, one single rose, for the old woman had forgotten to wish that one away when she hid the living roses, and the sight of it stirred something deep in Gerda, and she cried out, "Oh, there are no roses here." And she ran about the garden, searching and searching, and could find none, and she sat down and wept, and her warm tears fell upon the very spot where a rose tree had sunk into the earth. And when her tears wetted the ground, the tree sprang up again all at once, in full bloom, just as lovely as before. And Gerda threw her arms about it and kissed the roses, and thought of the beautiful roses at home, and with them, all at once, she remembered Kay. And here is a small bright truth to carry into sleep, that it was her own tears, her warm and honest grief, that broke the enchantment and brought the roses back and gave her back her memory and her purpose. For tears shed out of love are never wasted. They are the very thing that thaws what has been frozen. Remember that. We will need it again before the story ends. And Gerda said to the roses, "Oh, how long I have been kept here. I was seeking Kay. Do you know? Is he dead?" And the roses said, "No, he is not dead. We have been down in the earth where all the dead are, and Kay is not among them." And Gerda was so glad she could have kissed every flower in the garden. And she ran to the little gate and pushed it open and hurried out. And only then did she see how much time had slipped away. For it was no longer summer. It was late autumn now. The leaves were falling. And she had wasted long golden weeks in that forgetful garden. And she ran on barefoot into the wide, cold world. And she was so tired, and the way was so long. And at last she sat down upon a stone to rest. And there was a crow hopping about on the snow before her. And the crow looked at her a long while, and cocked its head, and said, "Caw, good day," as well as it could. And the crow asked her where she was going, all alone in the wide world. And Gerda told the crow her whole story, and asked whether it had seen little Kay, and the crow nodded thoughtfully and said, "It may be, it may be." And Gerda cried out, "Do you think you have?" And the crow said, "I think it may have been little Kay I saw. But if so, he has surely forgotten you now, for he is with a princess. And here is how it happened," said the crow. And it told her that in that kingdom there lived a princess so clever that she wished to marry, but only someone who could speak well and think for himself. And suitors came from far and wide, but all of them lost their tongues the moment they entered the grand palace, and could only repeat back what the princess said, until at last, on the third day, there came a boy on foot, with no horse and no fine clothes, only bright eyes and long hair. And he was not the least bit afraid, and he spoke as boldly and cleverly as could be. And the princess loved him, and Gerda clapped her hands and cried, "Oh, that must be Kay, he was so clever. He could do sums with fractions. Oh, take me to him." And the crow said it was not so easy, but it had a tame sweetheart in the palace who might help. And so, that night, the crow led Gerda by the back stairways of the great palace, up and up through dim halls, where the shadows of dreams came galloping past like hunts and hearts and lords and ladies, and at last into the royal bedchamber, where two beds hung from a thick golden stem like two lilies, one white where the princess slept, and one red where her chosen one lay. And Gerda crept to the red one, and bent back a red petal, and saw the brown neck of the sleeper, and she called out softly, "Kay, it is I, it is Gerda." And the sleeper woke, and turned his head, and oh, it was not Kay at all. It was not Kay. It was only a young man who somewhat resembled him. And Gerda wept, but the prince and princess, when they woke and heard her whole sad story, were not angry at all. No, they were kind, and they praised her for her faithfulness, and they said she should rest. And in the morning they dressed her in silk and velvet, and gave her a golden coach, and warm boots, and a great warm muff, and food for the journey. And they wished her well with all their hearts, and off she rode in her golden coach to seek Kay again. And that is a soft thing to remember, that not everyone Gerda met wished to keep her or forget her, that the world holds kind strangers to, who will help a faithful heart on its way and ask nothing back but the joy of helping. But the golden coach shone so bright that it caught the eyes of robbers as it passed through a dark forest, and out they rushed and stopped the coach. And there was a fierce old robber woman and a little robber girl, wild and dark-eyed, and just about Gerda's own size. And the little robber girl cried, "She shall be my playmate. She shall give me her muff and her pretty clothes, and sleep in my bed with me." And because the little robber girl was so spoiled and so willful that she always had her way, she wrapped her arm about Gerda and would not let the robbers harm her. And off they went deeper into the forest, to the great tumble-down robber's castle, where the walls were cracked from top to bottom, and the ravens flew in and out of the holes. And the little robber girl kept Gerda close beside her all that night, in a corner heaped with straw and rugs. And here is the fifth thread, so hold it gently, for wild and rough as the little robber girl was, there was something in her that took to Gerda, and that something was going to matter. And above them, near the warm chimney, sat more than 100 wood pigeons roosting for the night. And in a stall nearby stood a reindeer with a bright copper ring about its neck, kept tethered there. and the little robber girl loved to tease and torment the poor creatures. And yet she held Gerda kindly enough and made her tell her whole story. And when she had heard it, the wood pigeons up near the ceiling suddenly stirred and cooed down softly, "Cuckoo, we have seen little Kay, cuckoo," and Gerda's heart leaped, and she cried, "Oh, what did you see?" And the wood pigeons said, "We saw him. A white bird was carrying his sledge, and he sat in the sleigh of the Snow Queen, who came flying low over the forest, coo." And the Snow Queen was surely taking him to Lapland, where there is always snow and ice. Ask the reindeer there, he will know. And the reindeer said from his stall, "Yes, there it is, always winter. There it is glorious. There one may leap free across the great glittering fields of snow. For the Snow Queen has her summer tent there. But her strong castle is further still, up near the North Pole, on the island that is called Spitzbergen." And Gerda sighed, "O Kay, O little Kay, so far away." And the little robber girl said, "Be still now, or I shall stick my knife into you." And yet, in the morning, when Gerda had told her everything again, the little robber girl grew thoughtful. For even in her wild, rough heart there was room for a kind of pity, and she looked long at Gerda, and at last she said, "I shall let you go. I shall set you free." And she cut the reindeer loose from his tether, and she said to him, "There now, off you go. But you must carry this little girl to the palace of the Snow Queen, where her playmate is. You have heard her story. You know the way." And the reindeer leaped for joy, and the little robber girl lifted Gerda up onto his back and tied her on fast, and even gave her back her warm boots and her big mittens, though she kept the muff for herself, for she could not bear to part with everything. And then she gave Gerda 2 loaves of bread and a ham, so she would not be hungry, and she said gruffly, so as not to seem too soft, "There now, be off. And mind you, take good care." And the reindeer bounded away over stock and stone, straight through the great dark forest, over marshes and moors, toward the far cold north, running all night long. And this to you may carry gently into sleep, that it was the wildest and roughest of all the people Gerda met who set her free, that kindness does not always come wrapped in gentle manners, that sometimes it comes rough and fierce and half ashamed of itself, from a wild heart that has never been taught to be soft, and that such kindness is no less real for being rough, and may in fact carry you the furthest of all. And on the reindeer ran, over the endless snow, and the wolves howled, and the ravens cried, and above them the sky flashed and flickered with strange lights, great sheets of red and green fire rippling across the black. The northern lights, snap, snap, they went, high overhead, and Gerda rode on through the freezing night, deeper and deeper into the cold, toward the country where the Snow Queen kept her little frozen boy. And though it was cold, and though it was far, Gerda's warm, loving heart did not falter. No, it beat on, steady and true, for she was going to Kay at last. And at last the reindeer came to Lapland, to a little low hut, so low that one had to crawl to go in or out. And there lived a Lapland woman who was cooking fish by the light of an oil lamp. And the reindeer told her Gerda's whole story, though first he told his own, for he thought that far more important. And Gerda was so frozen through that she could not speak. And the Lapland woman said, "Ah, you poor things, you have still such a long way to go. more than 100 miles further north into Finland. For that is where the Snow Queen keeps her country house and burns her blue lights every night. And she wrote a few words upon a dried codfish, since she had no paper, and gave it to Gerda, and told her to take it to the Finland woman further north, who could tell her more. And the reindeer ran on again all through the night, under the flickering lights of the sky, until they came to Finland, and knocked at the chimney of the Finland woman, for her hut had not even a door, and inside it was so warm that the Finland woman went about almost bare. And she was small and grimy and very wise, and she loosened Gerda's clothes and took the ice off the reindeer, and read the words upon the codfish 3 times over until she knew them by heart. And then she popped the fish into the cooking pot, for it was still good to eat, and she wasted nothing. And the reindeer told her his story, and he begged the Finland woman, "You are so wise, can you not give this little girl a drink, some potion, some charm? That will give her the strength of 10 men, so that she can overcome the Snow Queen and win back her friend." And here is the 6th thread, the deepest and most beautiful of them all. So open your hand very gently. For the Finland woman looked long at Gerda, and then she drew the reindeer aside into a corner and whispered to him. And what she whispered was this: "Little Kay is indeed with the Snow Queen," she said, "and he finds everything there to his liking, and thinks it the best place in all the world. But that is because he has a splinter of glass in his heart and a grain of glass in his eye, and until those are taken out, he can never be himself again, and can never truly feel love." And the reindeer begged, "But can you not give Gerda some power, some strength to set it all right?" And the Finland woman said softly, "I can give her no greater power than she already has. Do you not see how great it is? Do you not see how man and beasts alike are moved to serve her? How far she has come upon her own bare feet? No, we must not tell her of the power that is in her. It lies in her own heart. It lies in this, that she is a sweet and innocent child. And if she herself cannot reach the Snow Queen and pluck the glass from little Kay, then no help of ours could ever do it." And there it is, the whole secret of the story, that Gerda's power was never a potion or a charm or the strength of 10 men. It was only her own loving, faithful heart. And that had been enough all along. And it is enough. It is always enough. More than swords, more than cleverness, more than magic. The warm, true heart that simply will not give up on the one it loves. And so the reindeer carried Gerda the last of the way, and set her down beside a great bush with red berries, at the very edge of the Snow Queen's country. And there he kissed the little girl, and great bright tears ran down the reindeer's face. And he turned and ran back as fast as he could, leaving Gerda all alone, with no boots now and no mittens, alone in the terrible cold at the border of the coldest place in the world. And I want you to notice how she stood there, small and cold and quite alone, without a single weapon or charm, and how she went forward anyway. And here the last part of the story begins. For before her lay the Snow Queen's garden, and it was guarded, for as Gerda pressed on, there came whirling toward her a whole regiment of snowflakes. But these were living snowflakes, grown large and monstrous, the Snow Queen's advance guard, some like great ugly porcupines, some like knots of writhing snakes. some like little fat bears with bristling hair, all of them white, all of them alive, all of them rushing straight at little Gerda to stop her. But Gerda was not armed with any sword, and she had no shield. And so she did the only thing she could. She began to say her evening prayer, softly, there in the whirling cold. And it was so bitterly cold that her breath came out of her mouth like white smoke. And as she prayed, the smoke of her breath grew thicker and thicker, and it took shape and formed itself into little shining angels, more and more of them, until there was a whole host of them around her. And they carried little spears and shields, and when they touched the ground, they grew. And by the time Gerda had finished her prayer, there was a whole legion of bright angels about her, and they struck at the terrible snowflakes with their spears and shattered them into 100 pieces, so that Gerda could walk on safely and unafraid. And the angels warmed her hands and her feet, and she went forward through the guard of the Snow Queen and into her palace at last. And there is a soft truth in that Gerda's only weapon against all that cold was warmth, only the warm breath of a prayer, only the warmth that was already inside her. And that warmth was mightier than the whole storming army of the cold. Now let us see what Kay was doing all this while, for he had never once thought of little Gerda, and had no idea that she was near. And the palace of the Snow Queen was a place beyond all telling. Its walls were made of driven snow, its windows and doors of the cutting wind, its 100 halls all shaped by the whirling snowdrift, the largest of them stretching for many miles, all lit by the cold flaring of the northern lights, and empty and vast and icy, and glittering and cold, cold beyond anything. And never was there any merriment there, not so much as a little dance for the white bears, never a game, never a song, only the great cold, empty, shining silence. And in the very middle of that endless, empty hall was a frozen lake, cracked into 1,000 pieces, all so exactly alike that it was like a work of great art. And in the center of it sat the Snow Queen when she was at home. And she called this lake the mirror of reason, and thought it the finest and the only thing in all the world. And there, in that great, cold, empty hall, sat little Kay, quite blue, indeed almost black, with the cold, though he did not feel it. For the Snow Queen's kisses had frozen away his shivering, and his heart was well nigh a lump of ice. And he sat, pushing sharp, flat pieces of ice about this way and that, fitting them together in every possible way. For he was trying to spell a word out of the ice. And here is the 7th thread at last, so hold it close. For the Snow Queen had told him, if you can spell out the one word, I wish, you shall be your own master, and I will give you the whole world, and a new pair of skates besides. And the word she wished him to spell was eternity. And try as he might, fitting the cold, flat pieces together, hour upon hour, day upon day, he could never make that word. He could never quite spell eternity. And there he sat, frozen and clever and alone, working at his cold puzzle, believing it was the most important thing in all the world, while the one who truly loved him was walking through the door of that very hall. For just then Gerda came into the great cold palace, and she saw him, and she knew him at once, and she cried out, Kay, dear little Kay, I have found you at last. And she ran to him and flung her arms about his neck and held him tight, and cried, Kay, Kay, it is I, it is Gerda. But Kay sat quite still, and stiff, and cold, and did not know her. And here is the moment the whole long night has been carrying you toward. So let it come very softly, for at the sight of him so frozen and so lost, little Gerda began to weep, and her tears were warm as a loving heart can make them, and they fell upon little Kay's breast, and they sank down through the ice into his heart, and they melted the frozen lump within him, and washed away the wicked splinter of glass that was lodged there. And Kay looked up at her, and slowly, something woke in him. And Gerda sang the little verse they used to sing together beneath the roses. And at the sound of it, Kay burst into tears of his own, and he wept so hard that the grain of glass was washed clean out of his eye as well. And all at once he knew her, and he cried out, "Gerda, dear little Gerda, where have you been so long, and where have I been?" And he looked about him at all the cold, empty, glittering hall, and shivered. For now he felt the cold at last, now that he was warm again inside. And Kay and Gerda held each other and laughed and wept for joy. And so glad and so full of life were they, that even the sharp, cold pieces of ice all around them seemed to catch the gladness, and they danced. The very pieces of ice danced. And when at last they grew tired and lay still again, they lay down of their own accord into the very shapes that spelled the word the Snow Queen had asked for, the word eternity, the word that Kay, by all his cold cleverness, could never make. And so, without his trying at all, only through the warmth of his tears and his joy, the word was spelled at last. And now Kay was his own master, and might have had the whole world and the new skates besides. But he no longer wanted them. He wanted only and home, and the roses, and the warm summer sun. And the two children took each other by the hand and walked out of the great cold palace. And as they went, the whole place seemed to matter less and less behind them. And they never once looked back, and the Snow Queen might come home when she liked. For Kay's release was written there in shining letters of ice. And out they went, hand in hand, into the world again. And wherever they went, the ice thawed, and the spring came. And they came first to the bush with the red berries, where the reindeer stood waiting. And he had brought with him a young reindeer besides, and the two creatures carried the children warm upon their backs. First to the Finland woman, where they warmed themselves in her hot little hut and were told the way home. And then to the Lapland woman, who had made them new clothes and mended their sledge. And on again over the snow. And as they went south, the snow gave way to green, and the first little birds began to twitter, and the forest came into bud. And out of the greening forest there came riding to meet them a girl on a splendid horse. And Gerda knew her at once. It was the little robber girl, grown weary of sitting at home and setting out to see the world. And she and Gerda knew each other with great gladness. And the robber girl told them all that had happened, and Kay and Gerda told her all of theirs. And then they parted as friends, and so Kay and Gerda came home again, home to the great city, home up the familiar stairs. And everything there was just as it had always been. The old clock still said, tick, tick, and the hands still moved round. But as they went in at their own door, they saw that they themselves had changed, that they had grown, that they were children no longer, but had become quite grown up. And yet they were still children too, children in their hearts. And the roses stood blooming in the wooden boxes out on the roof in the warm summer sun. And the two of them sat down upon their little stools beneath them, hand in hand. And the cold, empty splendor of the Snow Queen's palace had faded from their minds like a bad dream half remembered. And the grandmother sat in the warm sunshine and read aloud from the good old book, except the become as little children, the shall not enter into the kingdom of heaven. And Kay and Gerda looked at one another, and all at once they understood the old song they used to sing. And there they sat, the two of them, grown up and yet children still. And it was summer, warm and glorious summer. And all the long cold journey was over, and love had thawed everything, and everything was well. And now the story is told, and you may let it all grow soft and warm and still. For the splinter is gone, and the ice is melted, and the two who love each other are home at last in the summer sun. And there is nothing left in all the story that is cold, nothing left that is frozen, nothing left to fear. And so you can let your own last worries thaw away now too, gently, the way the frost melts from a window when the morning comes, and simply rest here in the warmth with me a little longer, while I gather up the soft threads of the whole story and lay them over you like a warm blanket smoothed down at the end of a long day. Do you remember the wicked mirror at the very beginning? The one that made everything good look ugly and everything ugly look worse, and how it shattered into 100 million pieces that flew out into the world. And be gentle tonight with the splinters you may be carrying yourself, for we all of us catch one now and then, a tiny grain of glass in the eye that makes us see only the flaw in a lovely thing, only the worm in the rose, only what is wrong with a person we love. And it is worth remembering as you drift that when the world suddenly looks colder and uglier than it did the day before, it is very often not the world that has changed at all, but only a splinter, and splinters can be washed out, always with warmth, with tears, with the patient love of someone who remembers what you were before the glass ever found you. And do you remember how Kay grew cold and clever and cruel, and mocked the roses and the grandmother and little Gerda, and how none of it was truly him, how the real warm Kay was still in there all the while, only frozen over, only hidden beneath the ice. And be gentle tonight with the ones in your own life who have grown cold, and gentle with the cold that sometimes comes over your own heart, for a frozen heart is not a wicked heart. It is only a hurt one, only a heart with a splinter in it, and it can thaw, it can always thaw. The ice is never the truth of a person. The ice is only the winter that has come over them, and every winter, every single one, ends. And do you remember the enchantress's garden, the soft, warm, forgetful place where Gerda might have stayed forever among the flowers and never remembered what she loved? And be gentle tonight with your own forgetful gardens, the comfortable places that are so pleasant you could lose whole seasons in them without ever meaning to. And remember that it was Gerda's own warm tears falling on the earth that broke the spell and brought back the roses and gave her back her purpose. And that if you have wandered a while in some soft, forgetful place and lost your way, it is often not a great dramatic thing that wakes you, but only one honest tear, one small, true remembering, one single rose that brings the whole of your heart flooding back. And do you remember all the ones who helped her on the long road? The kind river that would not take her dearest thing for nothing, the crow. The prince and princess who dressed her in silk and sent her on with a golden coach. The the wild, rough robber girl who set her free and gave her bread so she would not be hungry, the Lapland woman, the Finland woman, the reindeer who wept as he left her. And be comforted tonight to remember that a faithful heart on a long journey is never truly alone, that help comes often from the most unexpected places, from kind strangers and rough ones alike, and that you have only to keep going, only to keep walking on your own 2 feet toward the one you love, and the river and the crow and the reindeer of your own life will appear, one after another, to carry you a little further along. And do you remember the greatest secret of the whole story? The thing the wise Finland woman whispered in the corner. That Gerda needed no potion and no charm and no strength of 10 men, because the power was already in her, that it lay in her own loving, faithful, innocent heart, and had been enough all along. And oh, hold this one closest of all as you sink down into sleep, that you too are carrying a power greater than any charm, the plain, warm power of a heart that loves and will not give up, and that when you stand at last before some great, cold, frozen thing, some grief or some fear or some heart gone hard as ice, you do not need to be armed with cleverness or strength. You need only bring your own warmth, your own honest tears, your own faithful love. For those are the only things in all the world that can thaw what has been frozen. And they are the very things you already have. And do you remember how Kay sat and sat, fitting the cold, flat pieces of ice together, trying with all his frozen cleverness to spell the word eternity, and could never do it, and how in the end the word spelled itself, not through his effort at all, but through his joy, through the warmth of his tears and the gladness of being loved and knowing it again. And be gentle tonight with all the cold puzzles you have been trying so hard to solve, all the frozen problems you have sat over hour upon hour trying to fit the pieces into some answer. And let the story tell you softly that some things cannot be solved by cleverness at all, that some things are only ever solved by warmth, by love, by letting go and letting the tears come and letting yourself be found. And that when the warmth comes, the answer you could never force will very often spell itself, all on its own, while you are not even trying. So let it all grow soft and warm now, the mirror and the splinters, the cold sleigh and the 2 kisses, the forgetful garden and the golden coach, the robber girl and the reindeer and the whispered secret, the great empty palace and the puzzle of ice. Let them all melt gently away like frost from a window pane in the morning sun. And keep only this, that love thaws everything in the end, that no heart is frozen forever, that the warmth you carry is stronger than all the cold in the world, and that you, lying here so quiet and so safe and so nearly asleep, are warm and you are loved and you are held, and the long winter is over, and it is summer now, and the roses are blooming, and there is nothing left to do but rest. So breathe out slow and let the last of the cold melt away, and sink down gently into the warm summer dark, into sleep. There is no hurry now, none at all. The journey is over, and the winter is thawed, and the 2 who love each other are home in the summer sun, and there is nothing left for you to do but rest. So let us stay a little longer in the warm quiet, and let your breathing fall slow and easy. And if any small cold thought drifts up from the day, any leftover worry, you do not need to solve it, and you do not need to fight it. you can simply let one warm breath melt it away. The way Gerda's warm breath melted the whirling snow, here and then gone, and another may come, and it too can melt away on a slow, warm breath. For tonight, you are not fighting any cold at all. Tonight, you are only sinking down into warmth, deeper and softer with every breath. And picture, if you like, as you drift, the roses blooming in their wooden boxes up on the warm roof, red and sweet and heavy in the summer sun, and the two children sitting quietly beneath them, hand in hand, grown up now, and yet children still in their hearts, at peace, at home, with nothing left to seek and nothing left to fear. And let that same deep peace settle over you, the peace of the long journey ended, the peace of the one you love found and safe beside you, the peace of the winter thawed clean away, and let it fill you up slowly, warm and gold and gentle, until there is no room left in you for anything but rest. For the Snow Queen may fly where she likes now, through the black winter clouds, and it does not matter. She has no more power here. Her cold cannot reach into this warm and quiet place where you are lying. No splinter can find you here. No frost can touch you here. There is only the summer and the roses and the slow, warm breathing of a world at peace. And you may belong to that warmth entirely now, letting go of the very last of the cold, letting go of the very last of the day, sinking down and down and down into the soft, warm, dark, safe and held and loved and nearly asleep. So rest now, dear heart, whoever you are and however long and cold the road has been that brought you here. You have found what you were seeking. You have thawed what was frozen. You have come home at last into the summer, and now there is nothing left to do but close your eyes and let the warmth take you the rest of the way down into sleep. And somewhere, in a small green kingdom on a rooftop high above a sleeping city, the roses nod softly in the warm night air, and the two who love each other are sleeping, and Gerda dreams. And in her dream, she is walking again through all the cold, far places, the forgetful garden and the robber's forest and the endless, glittering snow. Only now she is not cold, and now she is not afraid, for she carries the summer with her wherever she goes. And everywhere her bare feet touch the frozen ground, the ice melts and the roses spring up behind her. A trail of blooming roses all across the frozen north, and she comes at last to the great, cold, empty hall, and there sits little Kay. But the moment she takes his hand, the whole palace turns to warm running water and flows away into a green and blooming spring, and the walls of snow become apple trees in blossom, and the mirror of reason becomes a quiet pond with the summer sky in it, and the two of them rise up gently, hand in hand, into a warm gold morning that has been waiting for them since the very beginning of the world. And you rise gently with them, warm and weightless and unafraid, up and up into the soft summer dark, where there is no more cold, and no more winter, and no more splinter, and nothing left anywhere to fear, but only warmth, and only love, and only rest, and sleep, and sleep, and sleep.